Wake up. It's going to be a good morning out there. It's October 23rd. Should be a pretty nice fall day throughout the Midwest. And I'm Robert Wolf. I want to talk a little bit about a three-part segment I'm going to do, and we'll start it off here today. Rebuilding rural America. And what is it going to take for us to have a thriving rural America that also coincides with a thriving urban America? Because they really do work hand in hand. You know, somewhere along the way, we stopped growing food for people and we started growing profit margins for someone else's portfolio. And it's not just in the rural community or the farm community, it's pretty much across the board in the United States. We built a system that rewards the largest, biggest operations, not the best stewards. One of the measures of success is dividends for shareholders instead of income for farmers because they're not the same. And I think a lot of people need to really think about that. They're not the same. Today on Stirring the Pot, we're talking about a new American farm plan. What the country needs to feed our communities, sustain our lands, and keep rural America alive for the next generation. Because if we don't fix it now, if we don't fix how we grow, sell, and value food, we won't have much of a future to grow into. Okay, uh, let's be honest. The American food system is rigged. Yeah, and it's rigged in the same way our politics are. Through gerrymandering, politicians pick their voters instead of voters picking their politicians. In agriculture, corporations pick their farmers' crops instead of the farmers picking what's best for their markets. The same handful of companies control the seed, the fertilizer, the grain elevators, processors, and even in some cases the grocery store shelves. That's not competition, that's capture. The Farm Bill, well, it's supposed to represent America's farmers and consumers, but more and more, it only represents the lobbyists and those who write the bills and the corporations that fund it. When the rules are written by the biggest players, you can't call that a free market. You call that what it is, a rigged system. The consequences to that, and it's not just bad policy. It's bad for people, the citizens, rural or urban, doesn't matter. You know, we've hollowed out our rural America in the name of efficiency. We told farmers to get big or get out, and we replaced communities with commodities. Now we have empty schools, boarded up cafes, and main streets that used to hum with life that we lost the small town banker who knew your name and replaced him with a corporate branch manager that only knows your credit score. It's not that the American farmers aren't producing. Actually, they're kind of producing a little too much. They're producing more than ever. It's just that the profit doesn't stay on the farm. It doesn't stay local. It doesn't stay where the work is done. We've allowed a handful of corporations to do what the old political machines did, and that's draw boundaries so they always win. So I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting that I have all the answers. I'm not suggesting that any one person has all the answers. As a matter of fact, I'd probably be telling you exactly the opposite, that we all need to come together to develop the plan. Not just farmers, not just consumers, and definitely not big corporations that only really care about shareholder value, whether that shareholder lives in Iowa or New York City, or even if that shareholder lives in Hong Kong. So, How do we fix it? By putting farmers and consumers back at the center of farm policy, not the corporate boardroom. Remember, the US government, if you want to look at it as a business, means you, the citizen, is the shareholder. And if one man, one vote is even still something that we can say, then it belongs to all of us. Here's what some of the things look like. Support smaller farmers. Uh, for a farm bill, stop handing out the subsidies by acreage and start investing in the opportunity to impact the future. Help new farmers get land and financing, not just paperwork and debt. Invest in local co-op systems, community-owned food hubs, co-op grocery stores, regional distribution, real alternatives to the monopoly supply chain. Rebuilding the local processing. We need to have local slaughterhouses, dairies, grain mills, co-op owned, community supported, things that are local, not part of those big corporations. And that means we as taxpayers are going to have to fund it, and fund it through the USDA programs that prioritize more member owned style businesses than shareholder owned. That way, it helps spread that out to the people and creates less likelihood of continued upward growth of corporations while the people suffer. And then it comes down to breaking up the monopolies. You can't have freedom when four companies decide the price of everything, from the seed you plant to the steak you sell. So let's say this: it isn't about doing away with profit. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is it's about keeping it where it belongs, on the farm, in the local community, in the hands of the people who do the work, not just the people who are already rich enough to be able to invest because the system is made for them by them. We also got to understand we've got a changing global market. For decades, American agriculture has depended on exports to keep the books balanced, especially China. But aside from the trade war and the tariffs, China's got an actual problem that its population is aging and shrinking. Fewer workers, fewer consumers, fewer mouths to feed. Their buying power is leveling off, and that means America can't just keep relying on feeding China to stay afloat. We got to refocus on ourselves. We've got to build a system that grows for us, for Americans, for the consumers, schools, families, a system that can stand on its own when the global market shifts, because it will shift for many, many reasons. Food security starts at home, and with the people who plant, harvest, butcher, and bake right here in the United States. I really feel that it kind of comes down to the leadership, and I've definitely been a little harsh on Donald Trump, and I think a lot of Americans are starting to see his limitations, because as long as he can say things are great, he will continue to do that. But when things are going bad and you feel it in your bones that things aren't right, and he's telling you, don't worry, he's the smartest man, we're starting to see even some of his bigger supporters are starting to realize the guy just doesn't really have an understanding of what he's doing, and he doesn't allow for the leadership around him to help him out. So, if Donald Trump really wants to make America great again, maybe he ought to step off the golf course and into a hog pen. That might be a funny sight for some people. Pay-per-view rights could probably pay off the national debt. Uh, he could probably sell those pay-per-view rights, and but uh, I know that's more humor than anything else, because if you've ever been on a farm and had to deal with a hog pen, and you look at Donald Trump, you can just imagine how that would go. And while he's at it, he should send the USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins out to meet with the local co-op members, the small dairy farmers, or the folks who run a 200-acre mixed, diversified operation instead of a giant corporate family farm. And I'm not saying that all corporate family farms are bad. I'm just simply saying where we probably need to change and shift our focus. Because those giant farms have been told to do things that maybe aren't actually the best for us as a country. But it's these giant corporate family farms that dominate his donor list. So I don't think he's going to send Brooke Rollins out to meet local farmers or go to local farmer markets and meet the market gardeners that sell to the people. It would take up too much time for them to want to do it. If the administration is serious about rebuilding rural America, then it's time to show up where the real work happens, not just for photo ops. Because I'll tell you, this greatness doesn't come from ribbon cutting. It comes from getting out there and working and a little dirt under your fingernails from the community that feeds themselves. You know, we can keep pretending the system works just because the stock market says it does. It doesn't work. Uh, we know it doesn't work for the people on the tractor or behind the counter or the kitchen table trying to stretch another grocery dollar. A new American Farm Plan isn't radical, it's responsible. It's about ensuring that the land we love, the people who work it, have a fair shot at a future. Because again, it's about income more than shareholder profit. you know, if we start growing for farmers again, not just shareholders, maybe we can start growing for citizens again, not just the wealthy donors. All right, well, that's again, I'd like to have people feel free to comment and give me their 2 cents. It will be taken into consideration. I believe that I come from the generation of uh, two heads are better than one. So, working together to create a bigger, better future for all of us, whether you are in rural America or not, is the important thing. And sometimes it means you got to admit, at least, that you're not going to continue down that same path that you've continued down. You know, uh, we all make mistakes. We've all made plenty of mistakes. Anybody who says they didn't make mistakes apparently would be, um, well, I won't go there. You know who I was thinking. Um, I'm Robert Wolf, and this has been Stirring the Pot, Politics Without Fear. This is the first episode of the conversation on rebuilding rural America. And I think a new farm plan, a new farm bill, one that focuses more on the small to mid-sized diversified farms over just the row crops. Uh, because I think the row crops need to understand that China's probably not going to be in their market ever again or anything more than just necessity buying. If something went wrong, they got to come to the United States and buy something. That's not your customer, that's just somebody who got lost and walked into your store and paid for something. Uh, so, uh, Again, this is the first one opening up the conversation. Going to have another episode tomorrow and on Monday. And because sometimes the only way to fix a rig system is to stir it up. And until next time, stay smart, stay stubborn, and stay savvy. And we will come together and work together for a better future for all.